When Mia was hitting rock bottom, I'd send her 520 every night, a number that stood for love. She took my cash but never took me seriously. Eventually, she made it big and got famous, while I faded away to nothing. At a high school reunion, someone nudged her to marry her true love ASAP. She rolled her eyes, saying there's no such thing as true love, and even if it existed, he's been dead for ages. Right after that, she got the news that I'd been murdered. One evening, while Mia was in the middle of breaking up with her eighth boyfriend, the doorbell rang. She was getting fed up and told him, "Don't hit me up again," before heading to answer the door. When she saw it was my mom on the doorstep, she froze for a moment. Then her face got even nastier. My mom awkwardly smiled and said, "I know Ethan's not around, but only you can find him. Could you please talk to him and ask him to come home? I haven't seen him in forever." Mia replied, "I can't find him. Don't bother me anymore." She slammed the door hard. If my mom hadn't stepped back just in time, the door might have smacked her right in the face. My mom stood outside, refusing to leave, persistently knocking. Inside, Mia sat on the leather sofa, looking even darker than the snowy night outside. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, the snow was starting to fall gently. It was the same snow that was falling the night I was killed 3 years ago. Before I died, I was transferring money to Mia. The robber grabbed my phone and scrolled through my chats with her. He laughed at me, calling me a total simp. "You sent her loads of cash, and she didn't even respond. Might as well have given it to me." I was gasping for air, barely holding on. Too weak to argue, but yeah, I was a simp. I had been pouring money into Mia for 8 months and got nothing in return. Lost my life over it. If I hadn't tried to surprise her that night, I wouldn't have taken that shortcut and wouldn't have run into the robber. After forcing the password out of me, he stabbed me 8 times, each one deadly. In my final moments, I was still worried about how Mia would manage without the money. My soul slept for over a year. When I woke up, everything had changed. Mia was successful and didn't have to put up with my nightly cash drops anymore. I followed her around, seeing her switch boyfriends one after the other. They were all good looking, definitely better looking than me. I really wanted to ask her, "Did you reject me because I wasn't handsome enough?" But she couldn't hear me, not even when I called her a heartless bitch. I kept wondering when Mia would realize I was dead. Maybe she never will. If my mom hadn't come looking for her today, she probably wouldn't think of me at all. Mia has an old phone she always keeps under her pillow, checking it every time she gets up at night. I never saw her turn it on, so I have no clue what's on there. All I know is that when I was chasing her 3 years ago, she was still single, but I heard she had an unforgettable first love. Whatever's on that phone must be about her true love and nothing to do with me. Eventually, my mom was taken home by my dad. As they walked away, they whispered to each other, "Does she really not know where Ethan is? Ethan cared so much about her. How could he not try to find her? Maybe Ethan was heartbroken. You should stop bothering her." But I really miss Ethan. "He hasn't come home in 3 years," my mom said, her voice breaking with tears. My dad, wiping her tears, looked back one last time as they walked farther away. I couldn't hear what they were saying anymore. I really wanted to go home with them, but I couldn't. Since waking up, I could only stay close to Mia, no more than 5 meters away. Any further and I couldn't move. An invisible barrier always held me back. I miss my parents too, but I can only catch glimpses when they come looking for Mia. I failed them. Mia. Besides her job and social events, she occasionally meets up with old classmates, mostly women, with a couple of guys thrown in. I guess the cool, handsome dude is Mia's unforgettable first love. He looks at her with so much affection. At every reunion, they sit together. In the year I've been following Mia, I've never seen her this close to any guy. An old classmate teased, "President Kim, when are you going to marry Daniel? He's been waiting for you 3 years. If he keeps waiting, he's going to be an old bachelor." "Yeah, our President Kim is already killing it in her career. Time to find a man to keep her warm," another joked. Mia let them rib her without saying a word, until someone asked, "Isn't President Kim's true love Daniel?" Mia sneered, "What's true love? Even if there was, he's long dead." As soon as she finished, her phone rang. The guys who robbed and killed me 3 years ago just pulled another heist. After the police caught him, they dug up the details of my death and informed my parents. Then, my parents called Mia, saying, "We're sorry, Ethan's been gone a long time. Sorry for bothering you before and causing trouble." My mom couldn't stop crying, and my dad tried to comfort her quietly, tears in his voice. It felt like my heart was being ripped apart. I looked at Mia and saw she was completely frozen. Others in the room noticed and asked, "Mia, what's wrong?" Daniel asked softly, eyes full of concern. Mia snapped out of her thoughts and suddenly stood up, startling everyone. "What's up?" She ignored their questions, didn't grab her coat, and rushed out the door. Usually when I follow her, she's pretty chill, but today she was moving so fast I had to keep up. At one point, she even bumped into a waiter but didn't look back, just kept running. The waiter grumbled under his breath, "No manners," and I nodded in agreement. Thankfully, Mia didn't drink at the party, so she could still drive herself. Normally, she's a steady driver, but today she was reckless, acting like the road was hers and everyone else needed to move. When she got to my place, my mom was already crying her eyes out on the couch. My dad's eyes were red. He's a strong guy, and when I was alive, I never saw him so vulnerable. During my rebellious teen years, I even doubted if he loved me. Why else would he be so tough on me? But now, seeing him bent over, grieving because I'm gone, I finally understood he loved me deeply. Mia stood in front of them, her voice sounding different, like she was hiding something. "What happened? What about Ethan?" My mom couldn't handle hearing my name now. She was heartbroken and broke into tears again. It was my dad. His voice hoarse and trembling, he explained to Mia, "This morning, we were called to the police station. They found Ethan's remains and confirmed it. Ethan was killed 3 years ago." When exactly 3 years ago? My dad was too grief-stricken to speak. He handed Mia the items the police had given them. Mia quickly took them, carefully reading every word. It was then I realized that after I died, the robber used my phone to fake that I was still alive for my parents and Mia for 6 whole months. In his last message to Mia, he was harsh. "You're such a greedy, lustful woman. It's disgusting. I found someone obedient. Goodbye." Then he deleted Mia from my WeChat. So, did Mia think I moved on and found someone else? A thin sheet of paper detailed everything the murderer did in the 6 months after my death. My parents and Mia were completely duped. Later, the murderer thought enough time had passed and all clues were gone. So he ditched my phone and stopped caring. Only then did my parents report me missing, but too much time had passed, and the murderer was good at covering his tracks, so the police couldn't find him easily. It dragged on for 3 years, and in the following 2.5, Mia never thought to look for me, not even once. So now what's this immense grief she's showing? Nah, even if you subtract the first 6 months and the next 2.5 years, Mia never looked for me, not even once. So why this huge sadness she's showing over my death? Did she forget she's had 8 boyfriends? And then there's Daniel. Just as I thought of him, he called Mia. "Mia, where you at? You left your coat behind. Want me to bring it over?" Mia's voice was cold. "No need, I'll grab it next time." Daniel wanted to say more, but she already hung up. She then glanced at my parents, as if wanting to say something but holding back. My dad looked up, holding back tears, and slowly said, "We're going to hold a memorial service for Ethan in a few days. If you can, please come say goodbye." Mia said nothing. My dad added, "We won't keep you any longer. You should go home and rest." With that, he comforted my mom again. The two of them leaning on each other looked so sorrowful. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay with them, even if they didn't know I was here. So I asked Mia, "Can you stay a bit longer?" But she had already turned away. Mia, don't go. She still couldn't hear me. As the door opened and closed, she was gone. I tried to stay put, but the invisible barrier eventually pushed me out. Dad, Mom, I called, my voice turning into a faint breeze brushing past their ears, but they didn't notice. Mia went home. Before she even got inside, I saw Daniel waiting at her door. Mia, Daniel hurried to meet her, seeing her pale face. He asked with concern, "What's up? You left so quickly you forgot your coat." I thought he'd hand the coat to Mia, but he didn't. He was clearly waiting for her to invite him in. But Mia suddenly pulled out a cigarette and lit it in front of him. Daniel was stunned. I was a bit shocked too, since Mia doesn't normally smoke, even at parties. Unless she was dealing with someone important and needed to set the right vibe, she rarely touched a cigarette. What was up today? Was she losing it because of my death? I floated nearby, mocking Mia. You ignored me when I was your simp for so long, and now that you know I'm dead, you suddenly love me. She frowned deeply, finishing one cigarette, then annoyedly pulled out another. At that moment, Daniel grabbed her hand. Mia, what's going on? You can talk to me. After all these years, don't you know how I feel about you? Mia looked up, staring at him without blinking. Were they about to confess their feelings to each other? Right after hearing about my death, they were about to express their love. I wanted to float back into the house. Even though I couldn't move far, just 5 meters away would be enough. I didn't want to watch them confess and then hug each other right in front of me. 3 years ago, I only pursued Mia for 8 months. But honestly, my feelings for her started long before that. If Mia wasn't clueless, she should have sensed it a long time ago. But she never accepted me. Even after taking so much money from me, she never spoke kindly to me. Now that she's successful and choosing someone handsome she likes, it seems only natural. But still, it makes me sad. An uncontrollable sadness. I wanted to float back to my parents, to be with them. Just as I turned away, Mia's voice reached me. After all these years, you should know how I feel about you. A flash of panic crossed Daniel's eyes, but he stubbornly denied it. I don't get it. I don't like you. Mia spoke each word clearly. Daniel was stunned. I was stunned too. If she doesn't like him, then who is her true love? It can't be me, right? Mia left Daniel and went back inside alone, not even taking her coat. Once inside, she went straight to the bedroom, pulled out the old phone from under her pillow, and plugged it in to charge. She finally turned the phone on. I never expected the lock screen wallpaper to be my picture. Mia kept staring at the phone but didn't unlock it. She bowed her head, the light casting a shadow over her face, hiding her expression completely. I couldn't see her face, but the tense lines made me guess she was in emotional turmoil. Could she really be sad because of me? I couldn't believe it and was still curious about the phone's contents. But Mia suddenly pressed the phone to her chest and slowly lay down on the bed. She buried her face in the pillow, her shoulders shaking slightly. Are you crying? I asked, shocked, but she couldn't hear me. And of course, she didn't respond. Later, Mia fell asleep, and for the first time since my death, I entered her dreams. Even though I'd been with her every day, suddenly she could see me too, and I felt a bittersweet sense of long time no see. Mia stared at me, not blinking. Suddenly, she smiled. I didn't know why she was smiling, only that she slowly approached me and then opened her arms to hug me. Ethan. Her voice was filled with cautious joy, as if regaining something lost. You came back, didn't you? I knew you'd come back. Why would I come back? To find me. Why would I come back to find you? Because you love me. You see, Mia always knew that I loved her. In the dream, we could talk freely. So I asked her, do you love me? Mia nodded. Then I smiled too, smiling so hard that tears fell. I had prayed countless times she'd love me, but when she finally admitted it, I couldn't believe it. Is love ignoring someone for 2.5 years without looking for them? Is love having 8 boyfriends? Is love being tangled up with Daniel for years? When I loved her, even though she never responded, I never thought of finding someone else. Love should be singular and loyal. I finally got the answer I always wanted, but it seemed I didn't care as much anymore. What I wanted most now was to leave Mia's side and go back to see my parents. I was very worried about them. Originally, I planned to ask Mia in the dream to come to my house, but before I could speak, Mia was awakened by her phone ringing. The dream was gone, and I couldn't talk to her anymore. It was Daniel again. He said on the phone, "Mia, I was in a car accident." Mia asked, "Where are you?" Daniel gave an address not far from Mia's place. Mia rushed over and saw Daniel sitting in the snow. When she approached, he suddenly stood up and hugged her tightly, so tightly it hurt. "Mia, thank you. I thought you wouldn't come." He was so emotional, like he was holding on to the last hope of his life. I really didn't want to watch this scene. It made my past self look ridiculous. And it also made what Mia said in the dream seem silly. But I couldn't leave. I was dragged along with them to the hospital. Daniel had hit his head and suffered a mild concussion. After checking the scans, the doctor said it wasn't serious and let them decide whether to stay for observation or go home. Daniel asked to stay at the hospital and begged Mia, "Mia, my family isn't here. Can you stay and take care of me?" Mia frowned as if thinking. A few seconds later, she nodded and agreed. Me? Wasn't she just crying over my death? Didn't she say she didn't like Daniel? So what is this now? Women are heartless. Just as I finished complaining, Mia picked up her phone and called her assistant. "I need you to do 2 things for me." "At your service, President Kim." "My friend was in a car accident and is hospitalized. Find a reliable caregiver." "Understood. And I want to see someone." The person Mia wanted to see was the guy who robbed and killed me 3 years ago. Her assistant was pretty resourceful. Early the next morning, she called Mia back. "President Kim, it's all set. The meeting is at 3 in the afternoon. You can go straight there." "All right." I followed Mia to the meeting. She took out my photo and showed it to the murderer. "Do you remember this person? Maybe our chat history and the money transfers when I was simping for Mia left a mark on him." He immediately nodded. "Yeah, I remember. Can you tell me what happened then?" The murderer chuckled, raising an eyebrow at her. "Who are you? What's your relationship with him?" "He's my lover." "Impossible. He was single at the time," the murderer said confidently. "I even used his phone to chat with the person he was simping for. For half a year, I was that person." The murderer was stunned, staring at Mia for a long moment. "It really is you. I saw your photo on his phone. You didn't look so glamorous back then." Mia pressed her lips together without saying anything, but I noticed her hand under the table had clenched into a fist. The man continued, "I didn't expect you to be doing so well now. Did you ever thank him for his help?" "I saw it. He transferred a lot of money to you. What did he say at the end?" "I don't know. I was nervous at the time," Mia replied. The murderer had stabbed him many times. He probably didn't have the strength to speak. Mia's fist tightened further, her nails nearly digging into her flesh. The man kept talking as if telling a story about everything he saw on my phone. I met Mia when she was at her lowest. From the day I confessed, I started transferring money to her every night with a message. "Will you be with me today?" At first, Mia refused to accept it, but I insisted, saying if you like someone, you should spend money on them. I marked each transfer as a voluntary gift, and it was a special number. Even if your business fails, I won't ask for it back. Later, when things got too hard, Mia started accepting the money. She accepted every single one, but never replied with a yes. I kept thinking she took my money because she must have feelings for me and just needed help, not liking me. Until the day I was murdered. After the murderer took my phone, he contacted Mia but didn't send any more money. By then, Mia's career had taken off, and in the year that followed, it soared. So when my soul woke up, I saw her already successful. Wearing designer suits, speaking confidently on stage, the struggles of the past were gone, replaced by an air of elegance and calm. I secretly felt relieved. If I hadn't died, The Mia of today would surely despise me. After leaving the police station, Mia didn't go back to the hospital. Daniel called her, but she didn't answer. She went straight home and finally unlocked that phone. I saw what was inside. The photo album was full of pictures of me. Some were photos I'd sent her, some she saved for my social media, and a few she secretly took during the rare times we met. All her chat records with other people had been deleted, except our conversations, which were still there. After the murderer deleted her from my WeChat, she started reaching out to me. "Where are you? Can we meet? There are some things I want to talk about in person." "Can you ask that question you used to ask again?" "Today, I'm willing to be with you. I'll be willing tomorrow, too. Have you really given up on me? You once said that if I got together with another man, you'd be angry. So why haven't you come to confront me after I've had so many boyfriends?" Her mom came to see me. "She said you've gone missing and can't reach you. Reply as soon as you see this." She must have lost it. Every message she sent had a red exclamation mark. How could I see them? How could I reply? She also tried calling me many times, but of course she could never get through. That number was kept active because she and my parents kept topping up the account. Every time Mia topped up the balance, she would ask on WeChat, "Still not ready to forgive me today?" Just like how I used to ask her every night, it was persistent and hopeless. That night, Mia didn't sleep at all. She held that phone, sometimes sitting on the bed, sometimes in the living room, and finally on the floor by the window. Outside, the night was vast, the moonlight reflecting off the snow, casting a cold and lonely glow, just like Mia's mood at that moment. She was an orphan, growing up in an orphanage, having a painful and dark childhood, bullied by other kids and abused by the director. For her, I was the only person who ever made her feel warmth and love, the one who suddenly appeared in her life and then just as suddenly disappeared. She'd rather I stayed missing forever than know I'd been murdered. With that last shred of hope shattered, it felt like her whole world had collapsed. "Ethan, I miss you so much," she murmured to the moon, not knowing I was right beside her. I reached out, mimicking the gesture of pinching her cheek, tilting my head as I called her. "Mia?" She couldn't hear anything. I could say whatever I wanted with no restraints. Actually, during the time I spent with her over the past year, I was never happy, watching her change boyfriends all the time. I thought she'd long forgotten me. If she liked me so much, why didn't she accept me sooner? If she'd been braver back then, would our ending have been different? While I was talking to myself, Mia suddenly got up and went outside. It had been snowing for the past 2 days, and the ground was covered in a thick layer. She built a snowman. When I floated closer to see it, I realized it looked a lot like me. Mia then walked around to the back of the snowman and wrote 2 words on its back: "True love." She stood in front of the snowman staring at it. It was so cold outside and she wasn't even wearing a coat. I urged her, "Mia, go inside." She didn't move an inch. In the end, she even hugged the snowman. By tomorrow, when the sun comes out, the snowman would slowly melt away, eventually disappearing completely, just like how I completely vanished from her world. My parents quickly arranged the memorial service because they wanted to lay me to rest as soon as possible. Mia went too, but she was stopped at the entrance by my childhood friend, Sam. "What are you doing here?" Sam was furious. "Get out. You don't deserve to be here to send Ethan off on his last journey." I know. Mia's voice was hoarse. She hadn't had a chance to say anything more when Sam cut her off with another tirade. "Ethan liked you so much, even though you never responded to him. He was always sweet whenever he mentioned you. And what happened? He died on his way to see you." Oh, right, I almost forgot. Mia still didn't know that when I died, I was not only transferring money to her, but also on my way to see her. Because the next day was her birthday, and she happened to be working late that night. I thought I'd surprise her by celebrating her birthday. Of course, I had a little ulterior motive. I wanted to be the first to wish her a happy birthday. I mentioned this to Sam before I left, so he always remembered. The murderer also mentioned it at the police station that day. But Mia, lost in her emotions, probably didn't hear it clearly. Now that she heard it, her expression was like she'd been struck by lightning. Sam, still not satisfied, continued to curse her. When Ethan was alive, you didn't cherish him. Now that he's dead, you come to his last farewell. Who are you trying to disgust, Ethan or his parents? Now get out. If I tell Ethan's parents about this, they won't let you in to say goodbye to him. Sam's threat worked. Mia didn't go in any further. After all, this was my final journey in the world. If it got ugly because of her, she was afraid it would make me unhappy. But Mia didn't leave. She just stood at the entrance of the memorial service. The usually tall, strong, and confident businesswoman looked so thin and fragile standing there alone. My parents had dressed me in my favorite outfit from when I was alive, using it to replace my body. During the final farewell, my mom fainted from crying. I was deeply saddened, watching so many people say goodbye to me. They were my relatives, my friends, and they were all crying. I turned to look at Mia. She wasn't crying. Maybe she had already let out all her emotions that night after coming back from the police station. So now she was particularly calm. She followed my parents to the hospital, where she ran into Sam again. "Have you had enough? Ethan's parents have suffered enough. They only had one son, and now he's gone because of you. Can't you stop showing up in front of them?" I'm sorry, but I may be showing up in front of them quite often from now on." "What did you say?" "I want to take care of them in Ethan's place." Sam was taken aback, then immediately sneered. "If Ethan could visit you in a dream, he'd tell you to stay away from his parents." Even though they hadn't been in touch for the past 2 years, Sam had heard a lot about Mia's behavior. He absolutely refused to believe that Mia loved me too. "Get out. If I see you again, I'll call the police." Mia ignored his words and went straight to the hospital room where my parents were. Sam chased after her, maybe in his haste. He accidentally let some words slip. When my mom heard him say, "You caused Ethan's death," she sat up in shock, despite her illness. "What are you talking about?" Sam quickly withdrew his hand that was pulling on Mia and tried to cover it up. "I heard everything." My mom was agitated. "What do you mean Ethan's death is related to her?" "No, Auntie, Sam..." He didn't know how to explain. In the end, Mia explained. She recounted all the good things I'd done for her, pausing several times, taking deep breaths before continuing. But even after telling the whole story, I didn't hear a single word about her love for me. After hearing everything, my dad was furious and told Mia to leave immediately. Mia didn't leave, nor did she offer any more explanations. My mom, sitting on the bed, used the last of her strength to angrily berate her. I remember not long ago, when my mom went to see her, she was humble and cautious. How the tables have turned. "Mia, why don't you tell them you loved me too? Explain to them. Say that you wanted to wait until your business was successful to confess your feelings to me. Say it." She still couldn't hear me, but I felt that even if she could hear me, with her stubborn nature, she wouldn't have opened her mouth to explain. Mia started appearing frequently around my parents. For me, this was good because it allowed me to see my parents more often. But for Mia, it wasn't so great because my parents never treated her kindly again. If you really think about it, the murderer was the one truly at fault. Mia couldn't have predicted that something would happen to me that night. It was an accident, and putting all the blame on her wasn't fair. But my parents were so heartbroken at the time. Holding onto their anger toward her helped them cope and gradually endure the pain. Time is the best medicine. It may not make the scars in our hearts disappear, but it can heal them. I watched as my parents went from breaking down every time they mentioned me to just having red eyes. Later on, my mom would unconsciously call my name, and when there was no response, she'd sigh at the empty air. I forgot. Ethan is gone. One time, Mia happened to be at my house. She was still outside when I floated into the room and witnessed this scene. I broke down right then and there, repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry," in front of my mom, but she couldn't hear me. I wanted so badly to tell her that even though they didn't approve of me being with Mia, I knew it was because they didn't want me to suffer. They raised me with such care. How could I not know they loved me? Originally, I had planned that after celebrating Mia's birthday that night, if she still didn't want to be with me, I'd give up. I couldn't keep making my parents sad. Who would have thought the turning point would be that very night? Mom, I'm sorry. You brought me into this world, yet I never had the chance to properly repay you. In what should have been your peaceful retirement years, you were instead consumed by tears. I crouched on the ground, crying uncontrollably. My dad opened the door and entered with Mia. This was the first time since the memorial service that my dad had invited Mia into the house. He said to Mia, "Miss Lou, we've seen what you've done these past few days. Some of the things we said at the hospital were said in anger." Mia replied, "I understand. I don't blame you." My dad nodded. "Then please don't come anymore. Seeing you reminds us of Ethan and those memories. They're too painful." Mia's expression froze slightly, and the light in her eyes dimmed. My mom, standing nearby, sighed silently. The room was deathly quiet. After a long pause, Mia bowed to my parents and said in a hoarse voice, "All right, I won't disturb you again. Please take care of yourselves." My parents didn't see her out. Strangely, after she left this time, I didn't follow. I stayed in place. Had I finally been unbound from Mia? Could I stay with my parents from now on? That was wonderful. After that, although Mia didn't show up again, Sam went from visiting my house once a month to 4 or 5 times a month. By then, I could move freely, so I followed Sam. And then I discovered he was secretly meeting with Mia. "You need to stop asking me to deliver money. I'm running out of excuses. And besides, my parents know our situation well. If I keep delivering money, they'll start getting suspicious. When Ethan was alive, you didn't cherish him. Now that he's dead, there's no need for this fake act. Let it end here." Mia waited until he finished ranting before speaking softly. "I will always take care of them. After they pass away, I'll go join Ethan." Once she was certain I was gone for good, she lived each day like a walking corpse. After the invisible barrier disappeared, I spent most of my time with my parents. Occasionally, I'd go back to check on Mia. There was a landline in her study. Once someone accidentally called on her birthday. That voice sounded so much like mine. Even I was surprised. After realizing it was a wrong number, the young man on the other end quickly apologized. "I'm so sorry, so sorry." Mia said, "Can you say happy birthday to me? Today's my birthday." It was just a simple phrase, no cost involved, and since he'd dialed the wrong number, he agreed. "Happy birthday, and may all your wishes come true." After he hung up, Mia didn't put down the receiver. It was as if the dial tone was the sweetest sound in the world to her. Birthdays come every year, but may all your wishes come true would never happen again. I was like a beam of light that unexpectedly entered her world, brightened it, and then vanished just as suddenly. She wanted to hold on to that light, only to find it was all in vain. She would live forever in the pain of losing me. Before leaving this world completely, I visited my parents in their dreams. I told them that I was doing well in another world, and in the next life, I wanted to be their son again. Next time, I'd be obedient, listen to them, and never make them so sad again. Then I visited Mia in her dream. "Mia, I'm leaving." She held my hand, refusing to let go. "You've been gone for so long, and you've only come to see me twice. Isn't that a bit too little? I've actually been with you all along." Mia paused, her eyes flickering as if she was a little embarrassed. I burst out laughing. "I know everything you're thinking. Don't you want me to know? I just think it's too late." "Yeah, you should have let me know sooner. Are you still mad at me?" "Of course I am. How about in the next life?" "You become my simp." "For how long?" "How should I know? It depends on my mood in the next life." 10 years. No more than that." "Okay, 10 years. That's a long time. But honestly, I don't plan on meeting her in the next life." 10 years? No more than that? "Okay, 10 years. That's a long time. But honestly, I don't plan on meeting her in the next life. This life was tragic enough. And my parents suffered because of me. I don't want to have anything to do with her anymore. I'm leaving. Wait. Hmm? Let me look at you one more time. Don't bother. I'll always be in your heart. Mia smiled knowingly. You're right. When she woke up, her pillow was wet. Ethan, I won't make you wait too long. You have to keep your word too. 3 days later, after sorting out all her affairs, Mia took her own life. She said she was coming to join me, but I had already completely disappeared after saying goodbye to her that day. In the next life, I'd have a beautiful, vibrant life of my own, where I'd never see her again.